Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I'm wrapping up my August reading month, which included the N.E.W.T.s N.E.W.T.s READATHON. So there are 7 books in front of me. I did read 7 for the readathon, but I did DNF one of them, so that's in the pile. I posted my TBR to Twitter, and I also, in my vlog, my first reading vlog ever, I let you know that I was doing the N.E.W.T.s READATHON. So my goal was to be a ministry worker in the Department of Magical Law and Enforcement, because eventually I wanted to become an auror, and you needed ministry experience before you could become an auror. So I thought these two would go really hand in hand together. I had to get an acceptable in my charms exam, an acceptable in my potions exam, acceptable in transfiguration, acceptable in muggle studies, and an outstanding in my defense against the dark arts N.E.W.T.s exams. So the very first book that I completed and the very first exam that I completed was my charms exam, and I read Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This was supposed to be read a book with a gorgeous cover. Not gonna lie, I just used a book from my year-long TBR to try and fit the prompt. So is it the most gorgeous cover that I own? No, but it fit the prompt in my mind. And so that way I could get done with my year-long TBR. So this book is, it takes place in this futuristic utopian society where everything is perfect. They've solved pretty much all of humanity's problems. Disease, war, famine. People literally just work because it's something to do, and it's not necessarily something that they need to do. They've solved aging by, they get to reset whenever they reach a certain age. They can reset to a younger period in their life and start over. So you have really crazy mixed families. One of our characters has a really odd mixed family where their mother has reset back to 24 several different times and bore several different children. And it was just a really interesting world. Because they've solved death, essentially, there is a system in place, a system of scythes in place to call the population. It is their job to maintain a certain quota, and they have to kill people so that way they can maintain population control. They're not overpopulating because people aren't dying of natural causes anymore. 2 young characters, Citra and Rowan, are both tapped to become apprentice scythes. Neither one of them really wants to be a scythe, but this takes them through their journey of how do they grapple with the idea of killing someone? Is there a method to it? Is there not a method to it? Each individual scythe operates within their own code of ethics, and so how do they fit within this whole scheme of scythes? I had such a great time with this book. I absolutely smashed this book, read this in about 2 days. I also listened, I tag teamed in hardcover and on audiobook, so both versions of it I really enjoyed. Recommend either one of them. I just really enjoyed this. This was a very big surprise to me. I pretty much just read this book because I needed to get it off my TBR, but I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. It moved really fast paced. It was a lot of action, a cool setup. 5 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed Scythe. I have Thunderhead on my shelves right now. Don't know when I plan on picking that one up, but very happy to have begun the arc of the Scythe trilogy. Okay, so my next book that I did pick up, this is A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe, written by Alex White. This is a book that I DNF'd. This was supposed to take place of my acceptable potions exam. It was supposed to be read the favorite of a friend. I think I only made it to 20%. So in the 25% of the book that I did read, I don't know if this is a forever DNF. Perhaps I'll pick this up at another time, because I did listen to this on audiobook, and if you followed along with my reading vlogs earlier this month, you'll see me struggle with this, because the audiobook narrator, do not recommend. Absolutely do not. Whoever out there is thinking about picking up this book, I can 100% tell you not to listen to it on audiobook, only because the audiobook narrator, you couldn't distinguish any of the voices, so you had no idea who was talking. How is this their job? How is this your job to read a book on audio, but I can't tell who's speaking? Nothing about what is coming out of your mouth is making sense. The treasure hunting aspect of it, I definitely got there. There were multiple characters, so I met the hotshot racer, but the thing that I just don't know if I'm going to particularly enjoy, no matter if it's in hardcover or in in audiobook format is that this takes like magic systems plus sci-fi and mixes them together. Upon getting through portions of this book, I think I've discovered that I don't like when the two mix. I wanted a spaceship treasure hunt. I didn't want magic. So that was really surprising to me, that I just ended up realizing that I don't like it when the two genres mix. But anyways, this is like a for now DNF. I don't know if it's going to be a forever DNF, because I was like determined to finish all of the prompts for the readathon. I took to Twitter, asked some people on Twitter like, recommend me some of your favorite books. So that's where I got Neverwhere, written by Neil Gaiman. So this took the place of the Potions N.E.W.T. This is a story about a young man named Richard Mayhew. He is about to go out to dinner with his fiance when he encounters this young woman who is in distress, and he decides to take her in, fix her up, clean her up. But by doing that, he has unknowingly and unwittingly gotten himself mixed up in a fantastical adventure. It takes place in London, but not necessarily the London that we're all familiar with. This takes place in London below instead of London above. London below takes everything like a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Earl's Court, one of the tube stations, and instead in London below there's actually an Earl's Court in the tube train. So it just took everything with a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of that fantastical element to it. However, I did rate this book 3 out of 5 stars. I for sure really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed this like fairy tale that we got wrapped up in with Richard Mayhew. It's a standalone adventure, so it just kind of makes you think about like what's gonna happen to Richard Mayhew in his happily ever after. However, I think I'm just not the biggest Neil Gaiman fan. This is the 3rd Neil Gaiman book that I've read this year, and they're all pretty much 3 stars across the board. Not necessarily bad, but like not necessarily my favorite, which is kind of a shame because I feel like a lot of people really love Neil Gaiman. You know, his batting average is just straight up the middle right now. So maybe I have yet to find that perfect Neil Gaiman recipe for myself. Didn't absolutely blow my mind, but I really enjoyed this adventure, liked the illustrations, and had a good time with it, so 3 out of 5 stars. At the same time, I was working on my Defense Against the Dark Arts. So the first one that I read was Nevernight, written by Jay Kristoff. This was for the acceptable grade, and that was that you had to read a book with a book that was black underneath the dust jacket. In my reading vlogs, you get to see the whole transformative journey of what I thought about Nevernight. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. This book completely shocked me. I'm dead. I had no words as soon as I finished this book. I wasn't entirely convinced that I was going to be someone who loved Nevernight to begin with. This book, I thought I was going to unhaul it. Then I put it in a second chance TBR, and here we are. It's a 5-star read. Completely blew my mind. It's a story about a young woman named Mia Corvair. Her father is tried as a traitor and killed, and then her family has been shattered. Her family dies. She ends up growing on the streets of God's Grave as a young orphan. Then she gets taken in, and she learns how to become an assassin, and she goes to a school to become an assassin. Every single expectation I had about this book completely got shattered. The first part of it was really slow for me to get through, and then as soon as Mia gets to her assassin school, then things definitely picked up the pace. I really had a good time with it. So I knew that there were footnotes from the multiple reviews and the multiple people who had read this book before me, and the footnotes, at first I was like skipping most of them because I was like, I don't see the point of these. Like, yeah, I know that they're supposed to be funny, but not totally my favorite. The footnotes in particular that are all about like world building aspect, I really enjoyed those, but just like stuff for like the narrator to cut their humor into the story, I just kind of skip over those. And then of course, there's parts of this book that are told in second person, but that's because we have a narrator who is telling the story directly to the reader and addresses the reader. So that I can get over the second person aspect of it. So yeah, I thought I wasn't gonna enjoy even those different writing aspects of it, and completely won me over. So 5 out of 5 stars. Then I moved on to Sawkill Girls. I decided to listen to this one on audiobook as well. So I was doing Sawkill Girls and Nevernight at the same time. This was for my Muggle Studies exam for the acceptable prompt to read a book with like a photo element on the front. So this was the best I could do. It's not totally like a realistic photo, but when you have like a ton of fantasy on your shelf, you know, I do what I can. It's a young adult horror story. It takes place in the contemporary modern world. I did listen to this on audiobook, like I said, and the narrator was top-notch for this kind of book. Like, the tone of her voice just completely matched the mystery to this island. So the story follows several young women who live on Sawkill Rock, and Sawkill Rock is host to this spirit that has attached itself to a family, and the family is in service to this spirit, and there's young girls that go missing on Sawkill Rock, and there's two young women who have been greatly impacted by this, and they become fast friends because they feel like they're the only two who really care about what's going on with these girls. They just kind of feel like the whole town has just kind of turned a blind eye to what's been happening. Without, too many spoilers, there's definite aspects of horror to this book. There were moments where I was really taken aback by the direction that the horror took. And I was listening to this in the middle of the day, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, it's a good thing I'm not reading this at night. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It's not totally in my wheelhouse, but I didn't totally hate it. This has inspired me to keep going with Claire Legrand and see what she does with her fantasy book Furyborn. I think if you're looking for like a really good creepy read for this autumn season coming up that has nothing to do with like the typical epic fantasy that I read, I think you can give this one a shot. Like, a lot of people really enjoyed this. It definitely would give me like spooky autumn vibes. Yeah, Sawkill Girls would be really good for that. All right, the next book that I finished for the readathon, this is Shadow Black, written by Sebastian de Castell. This was for my Exceeds Expectations Potions exam, and this was supposed to be like, read the first book that you can think of off of your TBR. So I had just finished Spellslinger when I created my TBR for this readathon, and that's how I happened upon Shadow Black. So this is the second book in the Spellslinger series, but it follows a young man named Kellen who lives in this desert fantasy setting where he's a part of this magical tribe of the N.E.W.T.s people. His family are very powerful mages. He is supposed to take his mage trials before he turns 16, and if he does not pass them, then he becomes like a lower class citizen in the society. So this second book, he's kind of off on his own adventuring, solving the mystery of the Shadow Black. There ends up being a plague that ends up affecting this town. It's really not a plague that strikes that many people, but for some reason this town has been overridden with the Shadow Black, and him and Farius Parfax makes a return. His squirrel cat Rykus also makes a return, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyed this as well. I also listened to this on audiobook with Joe Jameson, so I had a good time listening to the audiobook. I'll probably pick up the third book, Charmcaster, just on a whim, like if I'm slow in my audiobook queue, because I have the next one already in my library, so I'm just ready to go with that one whenever I get to it. All right, so then my final book for the Defense Against the Dark Arts exams was Bound, written by Mark Lawrence. It was for my outstanding N.E.W.T. Defense Against the Dark Arts. It was supposed to be read a book either set in Scotland or by a UK author. The only author that I could think of was Mark Lawrence. I had just finished the book of the Ancestor trilogy, which includes Red Sister, Grey Sister, Holy Sister. So I thought, might as well pick up the ebook that is like a short story ebook that's supposed to take place in between Grey Sister and Holy Sister. So this is what Bound is. We mostly follow Nona Grey, Arabella Jotsis, Regal, and Sister Kettle. There's something that happens between these young characters that carries on into Holy Sister. So I would say if you haven't even read Bound before you get to Holy Sister, you're not going to be behind. It's not like a very big plot point that you've missed out on, but just know that when you pick up Holy Sister, there might be a beat that you're like, did I miss something? And you missed that. It's not important to the main plot overall. It's just something that happens between these young characters that, like, when you pick up Holy Sister, you're like, oh, okay. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It's like, how do you rate a 35-page short story? Really, like, the only reason why you're picking this up is because you're like already in really deep with the story and you just want that extra supplemental information. I did question why this couldn't have been put in Holy Sister. Like, I really feel like we could have incorporated this somehow. We see Nona Grey when she's an adult, but then we cut back to when she's in Mystic class. And I feel like we could have included this part of the story when they're teenage novices. Did it have to be a completely separate thing that I was supposed to purchase off Amazon? No, not really, but I wasn't even planning on purchasing this, but I did because of the readathon. So this is Blood of Dragons, written by Robin Hobb, book number 4 of the Rainwild Chronicles. I read this for the Transfiguration N.E.W.T., so it's supposed to have a book with LGBTQIA+ rep. And I said in my vlog when I showcased this book, like, is it the best book for LGBTQ rep? Not really. Like, I feel like Saw Kill Girls would give you much better rep than this does. This is only gonna follow like one character, but I also just like needed another book. So I did rate this book 4 out of 5 stars as well. I think I might do a Rainwild Chronicles a series review. I did that for the Tawny Man trilogy, so let me know if you want to know my full in-depth review of this trilogy. I would say like each individual book that I read, I was rating them 4 stars. But the series as a whole and its place in the Rainwild Chronicles, I'd say it's a 3-star. There's important pieces that get unraveled, some really great background information on what's going, you know, who the Elderlings are and really their society. Our dragons are making very important strides as dragon characters go, and we get lots more dragon lore answered for us. The character wrap-ups in here that I got were pretty good, but not like mind-blowing. Do you know what I mean? So that's Blood of Dragons, written by Robin Hobb. That was a lot of wrapping up that I did. Did I participate in any of the other challenges? No, I'm not very good at that. And since I work at a university, school has started. So like August was like the first part of August was really great because it's always really slow. And so I smashed through so many books. But then the end of August is when the school year begins again. And so I've just been like go, go, go nonstop. If you commented on any of my videos at all, in the last week, I wasn't even able to get back and like comment back because I was just so busy with that. Did you participate in the N.E.W.T.s as well, or let me know what books you finished up in the month of August? You can follow me on my Instagram and Twitter if you want. It's at whatcassread, same as this channel, super easy to find. And then of course I do have my Goodreads link listed down below for you if you'd like to follow me on there, and that's your preferred platform of choice. And of course you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.